Welcome to Morrison Madness, take 27. I'm Don.
I'm Lachelle.
So today we want to talk about traditions, specifically,
Thanksgiving.
well, holiday traditions, family traditions, and then specifically Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Right? Like we're going to touch on other.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Well, I don't feel like we're going to get 20 minutes out of
You never know.
the traditions that we don't have.
We never stay on topic, so it'll go all different directions anyway. But yeah, starting with Thanksgiving traditions, because this should be publishing right before Thanksgiving week. So we thought, what better time to talk about all of those things that drive you crazy this week, but the traditions that you have.
I mean, I remember growing up, Thanksgiving was always at my grandma's house.
Okay.
And it was my grandma's on my mom's side. I don't ever remember my grandma on my dad's side. I mean, my grandpa died when I was really little, and then my grandma moved to Nevada and didn't move back until like I was in high school. So we always went to my grandma on my mom's side and all of my aunts and uncles. And
Sure.
then all my cousins were there.
Sure.
And other than just having the big meal with turkey and stuffing and I remember there was a lot of carbs. So there was stuffing and mashed potatoes and chicken and noodle.
Oh, chicken and noodles. Okay.
Right. And not like chicken noodle soup. Like
Right. The creamy chicken noodle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like chicken stroganoff
Stroganoff.
kind of sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
And
Good
those
stuff.
noodles are like
Egg noodles, yeah, they're good. Big
Yes.
noodle, yeah, that's good
But
stuff.
I don't remember there really being any tradition other than that.
No? Okay. So I know in my family, both of my grandparents lived fairly close, and I couldn't tell you. I think at Christmas time we had more of a specific which time we go to which grandparent, but I think for Thanksgiving it kind of fluctuated, and a lot of that depended upon if my aunts, because I only have aunts on both sides, were ever in town, because all of them lived out of town, out of state. And so I think it kind of depended on if on my mom's side there were aunts that were in town, then we would go to that grandmother's when the aunts were there, and we might not go to my dad's side. Sometimes my dad's side would come to my mom's side, like my dad's parents would come to my mom's parents' house for Thanksgiving. So it just kind of depended, but we always got together with at least one set of grandparents, if not both. Sometimes there was more than one Thanksgiving meal throughout the weekend, but I can't tell you that there was a specific day time type thing. Like one was lunch and one was supper. That wasn't the case. Or that one was on Thanksgiving Day and one was the day after or something that way. That wasn't the case. I think sometimes too we did like a holiday Thanksgiving because my dad's sister would come once for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and so we would tend to do all of it together at one time, potentially, if I remember right. But I could be wrong. But on both sides, food was the like central thing that we did. Everything centered around the meal. And so we had, on my dad's side, my grandmother would make black raspberry pie because she had black raspberry bushes, which is still fairly unique in Iowa. It's hard to find black raspberries in Iowa. And that was one of her main pies that she would make. And then she would make Finsbrød, which is a Danish cookie. And she would have tins that every time actually we visited, but this was a big thing at holidays for sure, that we would take cookie tins and she would fill our cookie tins with Finsbrød that we got to take home with us, as well as eat as much Finsbrød as we wanted while we were there. So that was always fun. And then, like at my dad's parents, we always had Kiafa, which is a Danish cherry wine or some other kind of Danish sweet wine with the meal. That was a big thing that we got to try that as kids, and then the adults had wine. We got grape juice in the little fancy glasses kind of thing. But on my mom's side, my mom's mom loved to cook all the time, year round. She was always cooking and baking. And so I remember the holiday, and I don't know if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but the holiday after my grandfather passed away, she had my dad's parents over and her brother over. So this would be my mom's uncle over for Thanksgiving. So there's a bunch of us there, but my aunts were not there. And I would say there was like a dozen of us, I think, there total, including my brother and I, who were not very old. Like my grandfather passed away when I was like in 3rd grade, so I was fairly young. So, and my grandmother said she wasn't sure that she would have enough food, especially desserts, for everybody. And when we asked her what all she had made 27 different pies.
Yeah,
for that holiday.
We never had that many pies. I feel like we definitely had more than one pie, and I feel like there was probably 6 pies maybe. Yeah. But there was a ton of us. I mean, I including my mom, there was 5 kids, you know,
right.
So my grandma and grandpa, and then I had 3 aunts and an uncle.
Right.
And then my one aunt had 5 kids, other aunt had 1, uncle had 3, me and my sister, you know, so there was a lot of grandkids.
Right. Right.
So, but we only had about 6 pies. I know there was always like a banana cream pie, coconut cream pie, 2 pumpkin pies, a cherry pie, and I don't know what else.
And I don't think
usually a peach and an apple, which I never ate.
I don't remember having that many pies at other holidays, but there was always a variety. But specifically that holiday, because we remember talking about how there was more than 2 pies per person. And it wasn't that there were 5 cherry pies. There were 27 different flavor pies. So she made one flavor of
Sounds
each.
like she was bored and lonely.
A little bit, yes. And so that was what she did, is she liked to cook and bake. And she even like redid her kitchen so she could have extra ovens and stoves in her kitchen, because she really liked to do that. So food was a big component of our holidays. That's what I remember everything centering around.
But was there besides the food, I mean, was there, so you said that the French noodle boys and the
Finnsbroy?
Yeah. Those were a tradition. Was there other food that was a tradition?
Yeah, so there...
Because, like, I just remember, I mean, we always had a turkey, but
yeah,
there was always a variety of things. Because
yes.
Most of the stuff was made at my grandma's house, but everybody would bring something. Like, each aunt would bring something.
Right. Sometimes there was... So there were certain things that were a tradition as far as turkey, ham, the pies, which sometimes changed in flavor. And then... sides, we'd always have green bean casserole. We'd always have scalloped corn. We would always have mashed potatoes. We'd have sweet potatoes. And again, there might only be 6 of us, but we had all of those all of the time. If you didn't have all of them, it wasn't a true holiday dinner in my family's eyes. Like,
So, right.
You had to have the buffet in order for it to be a holiday.
So then outside of food, was there any kind of a tradition that you did?
Yes, before we move on from that, at one point, and I'm not sure when this got introduced, was peanut butter bars. And I know my aunt, one of my mom's sisters, brought peanut butter bars to share, or brought the recipe, and they made them at my grandmother's, I'm not quite sure. And I remember them going around the table, and then somebody asked where they were because they wanted another one. And my brother sheepishly like picked it up out of his lap because he was the last person to get it. It didn't need to be passed anymore, and he really liked them, so he just stuck them in his lap and kept eating them and ate more than half the pan himself, I think. So then it became this big joke that we had to have peanut butter bars every year, and that became another tradition. Was peanut butter bars was a big component, which was fun. I still like peanut butter bars. But yes, we did have the other tradition, not so much on my dad's side, but on my mom's side, was playing pinochle. 20-card pinochle, and everybody would sit down and play 20-card pinochle together and play for hours. As soon as dinner was over, if it wasn't Christmas, so Thanksgiving especially, but if Christmas, we might do some gifts after dinner, but then they sat down and played cards. That was the next thing that happened. And they would play until literally they were falling asleep in their chairs. So they would play until the wee hours of the morning kind of idea.
So I know that football is a tradition for a lot of families. I feel
That's
like
the shirts.
Right. And I feel like football was on the TV,
yeah,
but we weren't all huddled around it. Like my grandpa kind of watched it a little bit, but the grandkids and my uncle, if the weather permitted, we would go outside and play football. Even if it was only 3-on-3 or 4-on-4.
Sure.
You know, we would play football. And we loved it when my uncle would come and play, because trying to tackle him was the most fun. right? From the time, as far back as I can remember being, like 7 or 8,
Sure.
and trying to tackle this full grown, and my uncle was not little.
Right.
Even though he's on my mom's side, my dad's,
A big guy.
on the other side.
Right.
They were about the same size. I feel like they're both 6'3",
Right.
240 pounds. I mean, my uncle's arms were as big as my legs are now.
Right.
He did a couple tours in Vietnam, worked construction his whole life. I mean, he was
built.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody gets a little heavier as they get older, but at that point in time, I mean, he was just a big guy.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so it was always the funnest when he was there. He didn't make it back for every holiday because he lived the farthest away, I feel like.
Sure.
And sometimes I think he had to go to his wife's side of the
Sure.
family for stuff. So that was a tradition. But other than that, the only other thing that I remember that we did every year was we played Trivial Pursuit. Like once it got later in the night.
Sure.
Because we did our Thanksgiving at lunchtime, right? And then people could, if they stayed that long, could just have leftovers or sandwiches or whatever for supper. So then after we played football, once it started getting too cold out or too dark or whatever, and not everybody played, my grandpa liked to sit in the other room, I feel like, and at this point was watching football. And then if he heard a question and he knew the answer, he would just yell it out, which was annoying. But whoever was left would sit down at the table and, you're having conversation but while you're playing, but we would play. And I feel like that started about when I was in junior high, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we never had I don't ever remember having the TV on at my mom's side of the family. Like, it was completely in a different room because we'd sit at the dining room table and it was a completely different room to get to the den that had a TV. And so if the TV was on, it was because the kids were not playing Pinochle. We were in watching TV, some sort of holiday special, something or other kind of thing. But we never had football on. We never played football, anything along those lines. No, nothing. Ever. And even when the few times like we would host holidays at our house, TV was the last thing that usually got put on, and then it was, that everybody ate, everybody kind of helped take the dishes to the kitchen. A lot of times the women would, wash dishes, what have you. The guys would actually go in and clean off the table, put the tablecloths away, fold them up, stuff like that, and get the cards out and make sure the cards were full decks, because with Pinochle you have to have so many decks per person.
Right.
And then a lot of times the decks wouldn't get put away correctly, and so they weren't full decks, and so you had to actually sort them to make sure that they were full from the last time.
Right.
And find new decks.
Like I said, I don't remember us sitting around the TV and watching football. It was just on in the
Sure.
background.
Sure. But yeah, I know that is a very popular thing for a lot of families, is to watch or play football.
So
We had nothing to do with that.
as an adult, then how did your traditions change?
So for me, they didn't, because I would go back home usually.
But then your grandma passed away, so you weren't going to your grandma's house.
Right. So then once that happened, my brother got married. It was kind of depending upon who all was going to be there. So if my brother wasn't going to be there, I would go home, and my parents and we would still have the buffet. It might not be quite as big. So we usually would have turkey, stuffing, which is
I thought you guys went to that restaurant.
that was 1 year. That was it.
Just that 1 year that I was along, we went to that restaurant.
Yep. Just once. So
See, and I thought that was like a tradition.
Nope.
If Aaron was going to be there, we went to this restaurant.
Nope.
Had no idea.
we would still have the turkey stuffing. We'd have mashed potatoes if Aaron was going to be there. If not, we may not have them. Sweet potatoes, scalloped corn, green beans. Those were staples as far as the holiday meal goes. And then because it was smaller, we a lot of times wouldn't play Pinochle. We would end up watching a movie together or something along those lines, or just sitting and talking in the living room where it was comfier on the couches kind of idea. But then like when my brother got married, then the year after they got married, I feel like for Thanksgiving, I can't remember if she came up or we went up to their house. And so then it was what she fixed for Thanksgiving. So it was different, completely from what we were used to. And then Christmas was a completely different thing because we went down to her parents' 50th anniversary and we celebrated Christmas with their family. And so that was a completely different tradition because they don't have
Right.
anything similar in that way. There's a lot of Spanish culture components going on.
So if you didn't go home, what did you do? Did you have anything that you did every year?
No.
So as I became an adult, and then, I mean, we were still doing stuff at my grandmother's house when I had kids.
Right.
You know, so then all of my grandmother's grandkids started bringing kids.
Right. So that's even bigger.
Right. And then it wasn't until, I don't even remember. I feel like 15 years ago, maybe, that grandma, it got to the point where it was too much work for grandma to keep doing them. I really can't remember how long ago it was.
Can you think about, like, what's Grace ever going?
Yeah, I took Grace to one. And Grace is 17 now.
Right.
I mean, that was the whole, one of the funny things. I walked in, was putting Grace in the high chair at the table, and the boys were coming in behind me, and everybody else that was already there was sitting around the dinner table, and they were having a conversation, and I didn't realize the conversation was about me until my grandmother looked up at me as I'm putting Grace into this high chair and says, "Donnie," and she kind of pointed at me, like with her finger moving in a circle, and she goes, "Are those things for sexual reasons?" And it took me a minute, and I'm like,
was she pointing at Grace? Like, what?
she was pointing at me, and I'm like, first of all, my grandma, you know.
Right. Why would grandma say anything like that?
Right. If I'm 30, my mom's 50, grandma's 70. Why is that coming up at all?
Right.
And it took me a second to realize what she was asking me about. She was asking me about, I had my nipples pierced. Oh. And I'm like, this is not a conversation that I'm having with you guys. Because again, two of my aunts are sitting there, a bunch of cousins are sitting there. Feel like my grandpa was in his chair in the living room. But so their dining room and living room were right next to each other.
Sure.
And it had a huge,
Yep.
like, doorway opening.
Right.
Like, bigger than what French doors are. And there weren't
Right.
any doors in the pockets that closed that I remember.
Right.
So, I mean, just pointing out that we went there for a long time. But when we stopped going there, I feel like at that point, my mom lives out in Washington. So we're not having Thanksgiving at my mom's house. My dad never had Thanksgiving or Christmas. One time in my adult life did my dad ever have it after him and mom split up, have it at his house because his siblings were in town. He always worked the holiday because it was double time or triple time or whatever.
Right.
So if we weren't going somewhere, like if my mom wasn't in town and coming to our house, one year my dad came to my house. So if we were having family come over, I did the turkey and the sides, not a ton, because I didn't want to have a ton of leftovers because the kids were little. So if it was just me and the kids, we did turkey pot pies.
Right.
I didn't want to spend all morning cleaning, all afternoon cleaning up, or all morning cooking.
Right.
All afternoon cleaning up. We had Popeyes, and then we played games and watched cartoons, and I just hung out with my kids.
Right.
And that became a tradition from the time that they were really little up in, I mean, even after you and I were married.
Right.
It's kind of been our tradition.
The kids see that as a bit of their tradition. Like they get that there's the big family meal potential, but there's sometimes that they're just like, can we just do turkey pot pies?
Right.
So,
always make sure they were turkey pot pies.
Right.
You know, not tuna, not chicken, not beef,
right.
Not Salisbury steak, turkey pot pies.
Right.
It's Thanksgiving. We're having turkey.
Right. So I think for me, because I was single, I didn't, I'd have friends. Sometimes my friends and I might get together and we would have like a potluck that everybody would bring something kind of thing and we would hang out, play games, watch a movie. Or I would go to a friend's house to their families and do their, family's traditional Thanksgiving kind of thing or holiday thing. So, but I never had several holidays in a row or years in a row to where I didn't celebrate with my own family and what they normally do. And so that has always been mine until we were married. And then if my parents didn't come and it was just you and I and the kids.
Right. If your parents were coming, we did the big whole
Right.
meal.
Right.
Otherwise, we just do the turkey pot pies.
Right. Yes. And I love that to a certain extent, but at the same time, because I'm so used to the big spread, it doesn't seem like it's still a holiday, if that makes sense. So
It does.
It's tough sometimes to do that way, but I understand it and I appreciate it because it's nice not having to cook and being able to just spend time together. And I think I enjoy it a little bit more even now when the kids don't live here. They have their own places, and so they're just coming for the holiday because then we can spend more time together.
Right. Catching up on stuff,
And
playing games.
It feels more like a holiday where before when they lived here, it felt more like I was cheating them out of a holiday because we weren't, teaching them how to do the cooking. Because that was a big part of it. Like grandma's stuffing recipe was never written down.
Right.
You had to make it with grandma over and over to learn how to make it to be able to do it yourself. And so that was something to try and, teach that and pass that on and have that tradition was a big component in my family. And so that I always felt like it was cheating the kids out of being able to do it. And then if my parents were here, my mom was helping me with it. So then the kids usually didn't get involved in cooking because there's too many people in the kitchen then
Right.
at that point. So, but even so, like, I don't think they're upset about it. It was just weird for me, but I appreciate the turkey pot pie and I like being able to, just spend time together and not have a lot of cooking and a lot of cleanup and being able to spend the time together and play games or something that way.
Yeah, and now our life is so chaotic, and the kids, with them not knowing whether they're going to their moms, and because there are multiple moms,
Right.
It's hard to coordinate a
Yep.
holiday, and so we really haven't been doing it a ton. We do it once
right.
in a while. We really try to do it for their birthdays,
Right.
and we try to keep that tradition going.
Right.
But for the holidays, we really just sometimes we don't do Christmas until February.
Well, a
whenever
couple
we can
years
get
ago, we
people
did
together.
the whole year's worth. Like, I
Right.
remember we opened up Easter eggs, and we did, like, 4th of July fireworks, and we had Thanksgiving stuff, and we did Christmas stuff at Christmas time for the entire year, because it was just chaotic the whole year, and we never got
No,
together.
we didn't do it at Christmas because it was nice out.
Oh, okay.
It was. I feel like it was after Easter, but
Could
before
be.
4th of July.
I don't know. My parents were here. I remember that. And Mom
Yes.
was like, you're literally doing every holiday from the last year. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's the way our life is. That's Morrison madness, Mom. That's what happens. So, but yeah, it was kind of crazy. So,
That is that birthday tradition though that I touched on. That is one tradition that I do like to try and keep going.
right.
Even if not all of the kids can come, whichever kid's birthday it is, I want them to know they have the opportunity that whatever meal that they want, we will either cook it or we'll order it, and they can come over and we can play games or watch a movie
They
or
get to choose
right,
what they
do
want to
whatever.
do. And it doesn't have to be on their birthday.
No.
It can be, a day nearby. Sometimes it's been a
Right.
month away from their birthday, either before or after, because they just know it's going to be crazy.
Right.
And so they plan it out and they say, yep, this is what I want to do. And
Yep.
this is when I want to
And
do
then we
it.
always let the other kids know this
Yep.
is the day we're doing the birthday. So if you work that day normally, ask
Right.
for it off. And,
Right.
and same with my mom. My mom's always invited.
Right.
And that's a tradition that, as long as we live around here,
Yes, absolutely. And right now, like when my parents come for holidays, we let the kids know my parents are going to be here. We let your mom know.
Yep.
My parents are going to be here. We're going to do the big buffet fancy meal at this time. And I say fancy, but we still use the regular plates and
yeah.
we don't get out
We
fancy
just mean
decorations.
we just mean it's not pot pies. When we say
Right.
fancy meal, it's not pot pies.
So the buffet style meal, all of the sides, the fixins, all that kind of stuff. We're
And
going
it's,
to do
and it's
that.
not the pressed turkey
No,
breast
right.
in a pan. It's an actual turkey.
It's an actual turkey. Yep. And so then, we let them know we're going to do that for lunch or we're going to do that for dinner around this time. If you want to show up, show up. There's plenty of food. There's always plenty of food. And so then, they can come and hang out. And then usually with my parents, we play pinochle.
Right.
We like to play cards and,
Although once in a while we talk your parents into trying other stuff.
right, might try another game or something that
Yep.
way. But we tend to play card games
Yes.
rather than board games with my parents. They're not much board game
Right.
people.
Although once in a while they've played Life because that's Grace's favorite
Yes.
game.
Mom's more apt to do that than Dad is, yeah. But in general, yes, it's more cards. But
So if you guys, have any non-traditional family traditions that
Yeah.
you do for holidays, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little here. Please let us know in the comments. We would love to hear what other people's
absolutely.
non-traditional family traditions are.
Yeah. Well, and even if you think that it's everybody's tradition, it might not be.
Right.
Like, so even if it's traditional for you, but somebody else that it's not traditional for them, then maybe yours is unique. So don't just assume that yours are not unique.
Right.
So really, any traditions, we'd love to hear what your traditions are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So definitely let us know.
Partially
in the comments.
because we just like to, learn about other people, but
Yeah.
it might be something that we want to try.
Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So, and definitely make sure you're following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, you can find us on Sleek Bio / Morrison Madness, I think is what it's called. sleekbio.com / Morrison Madness. It's kind of like the link in bio on Instagram. It's the same type idea. It's easy to find all of the things that we are doing there, so you can connect with us on all of the platforms, and it's one place to remember. Again, that's Sleek, SLEEK, bio.com / Morrison Madness. Definitely check us out. Connect with us. We want to hear all about the stuff that you're doing.
Absolutely.
And the stuff that you want us to do, definitely let us know, because we're all about connecting with you.
Yes.
So we'll see you next time. Take care.